Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and if you care deeply about the well-being and future of the State of Israel, you're probably disturbed, if not outraged, by the way in which the mainstream media reports on events and issues related to Israel, often distorting stories and conveying a decidedly anti-Israel bias. And those of you who watch JBS regularly know that one of the main preoccupations we have is to point out ways in which the mainstream media, on television, in print, get it wrong when it comes to reporting on Israel and to responding to the gross distortions we see, the inaccuracies we see in the media. And another individual in the forefront of monitoring the ways in which media throughout the world failed to report on the Middle East and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in a fair and objective manner is our special guest on this edition of L'Chaim. It's a pleasure to introduce to you Gary Kenzer, National USA Executive Director of Honest Reporting, an organization that defends Israel from media bias worldwide and combats the false depiction of Israel in the media, challenging the biased coverage and demanding accountability. Honest Reporting monitors the news for bias, inaccuracy, or other breach of journalistic standards in media coverage of the Arab-Israeli conflict and gives people the information we need to respond effectively to unfair media coverage of Israel. Honest Reporting is active in the fight against the BDS movement, which uses the media to sway people against the Jewish state. And through Honest Reporting's Media Central project, it provides invaluable aid to serious journalists who are seeking objective and truthful information regarding Israel and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And you can benefit personally and directly from Honest Reporting by visiting their website at honestreporting.com, seeing and reading the eye-opening and very upsetting examples of recent media distortions regarding Israel, and by becoming a subscriber to Honest Reporting's free daily alert. And Gary, it is so wonderful having you here at this table. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Talk to me 1 minute about you, then we talk about Honest Reporting. I know you've worked already for Magen David Adom,
yes,
the equivalent of the Jewish Red Cross.
Right.
How do you end up in work dealing with media bias against Israel?
Well, it's an interesting story. It's actually one of the things, as I made my transition from Magen David Adom 10 years ago, was I really felt I needed to affiliate myself with something that really was, at that time, was Israel's weakest link, and yet its most vulnerable point.
Yeah, but why?
Well,
why does that interest you at that point in time?
Because I love Israel. Mm-hmm. And I hate the fact that people take the news at what they see and believe what they read and what they see without digging further.
Yes, we'll get to that in 1 minute. Why do you love Israel? Did you travel there? What's your connection personally to Israel?
I've been there probably 50 times in 58 years of life.
Yes.
So it's just part of my natural psyche. It's my
And how did that happen? What's the first time you went?
When I was 12.
And under what circumstance?
Pre-bar mitzvah.
Really?
Pre-bar mitzvah.
With your parents?
Actually with a synagogue from my community. And ever since then, particularly these days where I've been supporting a post-bar mitzvah synagogue trip in Chicago, and have done that for a number of years. So I believe that the only way you can really get Israel is to be there. Mm-hmm. And it just became part of my thread, everything about me.
Mm-hmm. So then you say you love Israel, and therefore you want to work against the way in which people misunderstand Israel.
Yes.
And much of that misunderstanding is driven by a media which either doesn't get it or wants to distort it. And one of the first questions I wanted to ask you substantively is, what's your opinion on that question? Does the media get it wrong because of ignorance? Does it get it wrong because there is a bias and it wants to get it wrong, or it consciously is getting it wrong?
You know, it's an interesting question because 10 years ago when I started, I actually thought that it was just sloppy journalism.
Yes.
It's different today. And the reason why it's different today is because everything is so viral. So everything happens so quickly. I mean, how often do you get the news updated online? Every second.
Moment by moment.
That's different than it was 10 years ago when I first started, where you saw the paper and a day later the next issue came out. So the news didn't change nearly as much. So today we have an additional problem, and that is everybody's a reporter. Everybody's a photographer now. You know, the number of professional photographers working in the industry is so much less than it was 10 years ago because you and I are photographers now. We can all be photographers with our smartphones. So that's why I'm that much more interested in the subject, even more than I was 10 years ago, because news gets around the corner and around the world so fast today that it's hard to catch up to a story when you're behind it. You know, you want to be at least side by side to a story, but when you're behind a story and the viral aspect of the news speeds up, it's very difficult to keep up with it.
Okay. How does that relate to your answer? Is the news media simply ignorant, or is there something willful in the anti-Israel bias?
I happen to think that it's something willful. I happen to think that you can't, when certain news outlets seem to miss the state of Israel from their map that they show on the Globe, that's not accidental.
Who does that?
Well,
Who does that?
it's happened a few times.
Who does that?
The Science Channel, CNN has done that.
CNN has, no, that's not fair. You've seen CNN have a map without Israel?
Yeah, they called it Palestina a number of months ago.
What program?
It was on their website.
By the way, if that's true, it is horrendous. It's very hard for me to believe.
But they changed
that
it. They changed it
CNN
after we brought it to their attention.
But you had to bring it to their attention?
Right.
Is this CNN America or CNN International?
Actually, I think it was just through their website, so I don't
see.
know if it was America or international.
Okay.
Okay. The Science Channel, part of a Discovery network, not a small network.
No.
No Israel. Okay. So I can't. Can you write off the Globe, the state of Israel, after it's been around for 68 years? I find that very difficult to.
Okay. How about the New York Times?
Well, New York Times gives us more than enough work to do forever.
Is it willful, or is it just a lack of understanding?
You know, I think it depends sometimes on the story, because sometimes their public editor gets it. It's hard to tell sometimes with the New York Times where they're coming from. Okay, the New York Times has not been Israel's best friend. Okay, and then times they'll become a good supporter of Israel. It's a complex situation. I can't say blanketly New York Times hates Israel. I wouldn't say that. Okay, but I do think the New York Times, from our beginning, when the New York Times ran that picture of the soldier standing over the kid, you remember this picture?
Very, very well.
Okay, you remember the picture and what it said? An Israeli policeman and a Palestinian on the Temple Mount. Now that was a story that was carried by the Associated Press, but picked up by the New York Times. How could you make the assumption that this was a Palestinian kid? Okay, how could you do that? Was it because the soldier was standing over him with a club? If you look at the picture, you initially see that the soldier holding the club, you immediately think of a negative relationship between the kids sitting. However, the soldier is looking this way. The soldier's not looking down. And the kid was not a Palestinian. It was a Jewish kid from the Midwest, from my hometown. Okay? How bad can a paper, and it was the Associated Press that picked this up, but the New York Times picked it up from an AP article, an AP press right sight unseen. And it really begs the question about pictures and how powerful a picture can be. And that's part of what my whole routine has been over the last year is, does a picture paint 1,000 words? And it does. Pictures are very powerful.
By the way, one of the things Honest Reporting talks about is how in the digital age, photographs can be digitally altered.
Simple. I mean, anybody who's got good Photoshop skills can, and it's not even a matter of how you digitally change the picture, but it's a matter of the angle that you take the picture. Have you seen the picture from this past summer, last summer, of the dome with the Israeli flag on it? There's a picture that was circulating back late last summer. That dome has been there how long? A long time. How long has the flag been there? 1.5 miles away on another hilltop? A very long time too. But if you take the picture from a certain angle, it looks like it's on top of the dome.
As if Israel were trying to Judaize the dome.
Take it over.
Yes.
Do you think that that had some impact on the round of stabbings that were going on this past fall and winter? What was the reason why there were stabbings going on?
The word was, by the way, that the Jews were out to take the Temple Mount.
Okay.
Which there was no truth to it at all.
Of course not. But that picture may have been a cause and effect. Do we know for sure? No. But that picture was not very eloquent. And we wanted people to understand the context of that picture, that the dome has been there, as has been the flag. But the flag is on another hilltop a good 1.5 to 2 miles away.
Try to define for me, what's the biggest sin the media is guilty of? And we should point out again, Honest Reporting does work both in America but also worldwide.
All over the world.
So maybe but you're working with USA, right?
Well,
you're the executive.
I'm the executive director of North America, but I work with our partners in Israel.
So you know what's going on also
all over
worldwide.
the world.
Okay. Begin with America, then I want to go to Europe and any other place you want to take us. What's the big sin that you're worried about from the American media, and can you give us any examples?
Actually, it's very similar to what's going on worldwide. And that is, the news is so viral that I don't think people really stop to wonder, is it true or not? But they just grab the story as it is and just run with it.
What has been reported that is not true?
Recently?
In addition to the example you gave of the dome and the flag.
Let's take a look at what happened in the restaurant in Tel Aviv a couple of weeks ago, okay? How many papers in America and all over the world that said that these were well-dressed men? Okay, they were well-dressed men. Even one paper and some news sources said ultra-Orthodox Jews kill one person in Tel Aviv. What's that all about? What's the reasoning behind that? What would you think?
Tell me.
To create guilt in the eyes of Jews, to make doubt that Jews could do something.
Who's out to create guilt among Jews?
I think that it's a matter of creating a negative image.
Who wants to do that?
I think many news editors are out there looking to try and market their stories to the masses. And at this point, because many of us in our community, in the pro-Israel community, are quiet or don't know how to advocate for Israel, we know the right story, but we don't effectively carry that message throughout our means that we have, they get away with it.
Are you saying they're doing it to sell newspapers and to get ratings?
I think that it's a combination of ratings, to market to who is reading the papers, and also we need to step to the plate and say something. And I think too often, as I was saying before, I've had lectures that I've given all over the country, and I've had people say, I want to know who the marketing firm is that handles Israel's image. And I had to ask the person, say that one more time, just so that I hear it clearly. Who's the marketing firm? I want to know who it is, because they should be fired. And the truth is, you know who the marketing firm is? All of us. There is no marketing firm, really. There may be a marketing firm, but the reality is, it's our job. And how good did it go for us as a people when we sat back and did nothing of recent times? Didn't go real well for us, did it? So today we have the internet. Today we have social media. We need to make better use of it than what we do right now.
How?
Join up on Facebook communities, whether it be through honest reporting, which you very eloquently spoke about. We teach people how to passionately speak the other side of the story.
You teach.
We teach.
Okay. How do you teach? What are you teaching?
Well,
And the reason I ask is, look, again, I feel we are kindred spirits here.
correct.
The organization that you represent and what JBS is all about,
One and the
much of what we do is the exact same goal.
Correct.
And I use television, and you have your own medium to use.
Correct.
And you're all over the world. And I know what it means to teach. I want information given to our audience. People like you should
Right.
come on. I should be able to ask them the questions which represent what we hear every day in the media and in social settings, everywhere we go.
Correct.
And I want the brightest, most articulate Jews from Israel, from America, anywhere in the world, to come on JBS and to help our audience learn, give them substance. And let me just finish for
Sure.
one more. Very often people say, well, JBS already speaks to the converted. You're speaking to the choir. First of all, even if you're in a choir, you need to learn the music. And the problem in the Jewish community is most of the choir doesn't know the music. So I want people to come on JBS. Not only do I want to get more people into the choir, and I do, I also believe it's a mistake to ignore helping the choir learn as much about the music as possible.
Beautiful.
You do the exact same thing. Then I say to you, don't give me generalities now. I want to know, how do you teach people who come to your website how to advocate for the state of Israel? How do you teach us to better represent the state of Israel in a PR sense, meaning we're just telling the truth about Israel? How do you do that?
Well, I'll give you a great example of recent. Usually in March and April in North America, there's something called Israel Apartheid Week. Okay, you know Israel's been called the apartheid state.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we put out a very short 2-minute video on Israel, is it the apartheid state? And it's very simple, right to the point, and it's very clear.
Hi, this is Daniel Pomerantz with Honest Reporting. College campuses and other organizations all over the world are getting ready to mount Israel Apartheid Week. Disguised as a human rights campaign, it is actually a series of public events designed to spread misinformation and hatred about Israel. But is any of what they say actually true? Apartheid, according to Webster's dictionary, is racial segregation, specifically a formal policy of political and economic discrimination against non-European groups in the Republic of South Africa. Israel is not South Africa. Israel does, however, have 1.7 million Arab citizens, full citizens with full equal rights, including 17 members of Knesset, that's the Israeli parliament, of the religion Druze, Bedouin, and Sunni Muslim. There is an Israeli Arab Supreme Court justice, a mayor, enough doctors and lawyers to make a Jewish mother proud, actors, models, news anchors, athletes, soldiers, singers. What there is not is separate water fountains, separate toilets, separate public transportations, or any of the typical features of racial segregation. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel is the only country in the Middle East with equal rights for all religions, genders, and sexual orientations. Israel, in reality, is the exact opposite of everything that the word apartheid actually means. But there are indeed countries in the world with serious problems. The U.S. State Department recognized cases of serious and institutional religious oppression in Burma, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, and others. Apartheid.org's response? Nothing. In Saudi Arabia, women are limited from many basic freedoms, such as driving a car or even walking alone in their own neighborhoods, while in Iran, a woman was recently hanged for killing the man who was trying to rape her. Apartheid.org's response? Nothing. In Syria's civil war, some 250,000 people have already died, including over 3,000 Palestinians. Apartheid.org's response? Nothing. We see that apartheid.org is not pro-human rights, not pro-equality, not pro-democracy, not even pro-Palestinian. And chances are they'll be on your college campus or your children's college campus within the next month.
That video has been shared and forwarded hundreds of thousands of times throughout the world. It's a very powerful video. Okay? It shows you that, first of all, Israel is far from apartheid. Okay? But the fact is, this is what kids are learning on campus. In February, March, and April, it's Apartheid Week. So we teach people, and we want people to forward this information to the world. Okay? That's how we get the conversation going. And quite frankly, it's become a very incredible conversation. The fact that it didn't sit on our website doing nothing means that it was shared all over the world is pretty powerful.
Okay, that's a superb example. Can you give me any other examples like it? How you are literally giving the American Jewish community and anyone of good will, Jewish and non-Jewish, the information they need to be able to counter claims like Israel is brutalizing Palestinians. The Israeli occupation is a function of a colonial enterprise.
How about cutting off water during Ramadan?
Cutting off water.
We just put out a video on that this past week. We put out another video, 1.5 minute, 2-minute video on that exact same thing. Right now, it's been forwarded already close to several thousand times.
Last week, the British newspaper The Independent said that Israel had cut off water supplies to Palestinians. The International Business Times called it water apartheid. It was picked up by newspapers all over the world and went viral on social media. Just one problem. The whole thing was a lie. What actually happened was this pipe burst, and Israeli workers promptly came out and fixed it.
This story is great for those who hate Israel. I mean, think about it. Israel is denying drinking water to Palestinians during Ramadan when it's boiling hot outside. They even ran a picture of Palestinian children queuing up with plastic jugs to get water that Israel was denying them. But the problem is the whole story is false. Even after we contacted them, they went ahead and made small changes to the story, but that's not the point. Why should they continue to have a story on their website that is false? The whole thing needs to be taken down.
This kind of libel against Israel is nothing new. In 2015, another story about water went viral. It said that Israel had opened its dams in order to flood Gaza. In reality, the dams in question didn't even exist, and the flooding was due to rain. Click on the link in the description to add your name to our letter, telling The Independent that they must retract their untrue story. With your help, we can make a real difference.
So we put out these instructional videos for a very simple reason. They're quick, they're short, and they're powerful. When we did the UN video, when we did the video on the Israel Apartheid Week, we talked about, and we gave specific examples, very quick examples, how unapartheid it really is. Okay, they don't have separate toilets, they don't have separate water fountains, they don't have separate hospital entrances. Everybody uses the same hospital. Okay? In fact, many very famous Palestinian leaders, where do they choose to send their family? We need to make sure that people know that.
Yes.
Okay? You know, the other concern we have is that too many people, when they write letters to the editor, they write these long Megillas. Who reads a long Megillah unless it's Purim? Seriously, okay? Do you know the average length that a person reads an article? How long do you think an article should be today?
How long?
Oh, if an article is more than 25, 30 words, it's too long.
That's like a tweet.
But this is the case. Years ago, when you were writing letters to the editor, if you wrote a letter that was 4 paragraphs long, too long. Okay, when you write a letter to the editor, I had somebody who wrote a letter to the editor, and she called me and said, I'd like to read you the letter. 5 minutes goes by, 10 minutes goes by, 18 minutes goes by. Thank God there's a mute button on the phone. Thank God. Finally, afterwards, she said, what do you think? I said, how many words did you just read? She said, well, I did a word check, and it's only 4,000 words. I said, that's 3,800 and something words. Too much. She said, you may feel good about it, but nobody's going to read it. It's too long. Do you want to get your point across or do you want to feel better about what you're doing?
Okay, and just to be fair, how can you really be sophisticated in that short a piece?
Well, let's take some examples.
Please.
Okay, so the BDS movement claims success for shutting down the SodaStream factory, right? They claim success for that. Hundreds of Palestinians are unemployed now,
Correct.
out of full-time benefits
Correct.
and wages. How would you approach that? Well, the way we saw many people do it that was very successful was rather than look at the negative, look at the positive, going, thank you for the closing of the SodaStream factory. You've improved the economy of Israel by gaining more Israelis in employment. That's a positive way to approach it. It's a terrible way to approach it, but it's a positive way to approach it.
Yes, by the way, it sounds like you're anti-Palestinian by writing that letter.
Actually, this was how many people responded to it. They're trying to be positive about it. Okay.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Okay.
I want to slam anybody who tried to close down a West Bank facility that not only was giving jobs to Palestinians, was treating Palestinians the same way Israelis treat Israelis,
Right.
but also had created for the Palestinians working there their own mosque,
And their own
right.
living conditions that were
Exactly.
phenomenal.
And the Palestinians were thrilled.
But the BDS movement, they wanted it shut down.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
So I think, there might be a difference in how to respond to negative. I think that many people want positive rather than negative these days. We could go on and talk about how, from 1967, the blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to hear about that today. Everybody wants to hear about today now. And
Now,
unfortunately,
what do you do with that? By the way, Gary, what do you do with that?
What do you mean?
History does matter, doesn't it?
well, it does matter, but I don't want to say you don't want to confuse the facts with history, because people have said that to me before. But on the other hand, you want to get people on board with what you're talking about. And if you want to get the younger generation on board, they're not going to want to hear about history. They're just not going to want to hear about history. They want to know today and what can they do today. It's a very sad statement.
It is a sad statement, and it creates a much more difficult job.
It's incredibly complex. And we have to make sure that we see, that we empower people to feel that this is not bigger than they can handle.
Okay, just to say, I'll give you an example. It's fashionable to use the word narrative. There's the Zionist Jewish narrative, there's the Palestinian narrative.
Right.
It makes it sound as if both are stories and that both are relatively of equal value. My own sense is there is history here. There is fact. There are facts throughout history. There are elements of every part of history that you can debate what was going on.
Right.
But there are certain things that just happened.
Right.
Okay? I keep harping on the fact for this audience, Khartoum happened. There was a 6-day war in June of '67. In August, after being offered by Levi Eshkol to return all the land, virtually all the land, the Arab League goes to Khartoum and issues a statement on September 1st, no negotiation, no recognition, no peace. That's a fact. Israel says here, and they say, not over my dead body.
Right.
Now that's not a narrative, that's the
Fact.
truth.
Okay.
But using the constraint that you've described, you can't tell the story because that's history. That's 1967, which is somewhere around the Civil War or the Revolutionary War. So, but it's not fair to talk about today without understanding there's a history that is brought today into being. And how do you deal with that?
It's a tough issue because people today in the social media and the viral aspect of the news want quick snippets, okay? And I'll give you an example. I've been in hundreds of audiences over the years, hundreds. And I ask people, what's the thing that you remember most about a story? What's the thing that draws you into a story? You know what it is? 5 or 6 words, it's the headline. That'll either create the opinion that you want to read something or you'll move on to the next story. That's even been more exacerbated today because of the social media. I can't live in a vacuum and think that it doesn't exist anymore. I think people read stories and get information today very differently than we did even 5 years ago.
Okay, I want to fight that. Do you want to fight that? or do you think it's a losing fight? In other words, quite honestly, the best example to give right now is this edition of L'chaim. You've been on television a lot.
Yes.
Very often you're given 2 to 3 minutes. I'm giving you an hour. Am I wrong? Should I have said to you, you got 2 minutes, Gary, go? Or should I say to our audience, I'm going to sit and discuss this intelligently over time with somebody who's intimately involved in this problem and may have something to teach us?
You're not wrong. I'm not disagreeing with you. But on the other hand, do we get information across to people and motivate them to do something, or do we get them so much information that they feel, oh my God, I'm never going to understand this? It's a draw.
And the answer is we try to do both. We try to do both as best we can.
As best as we can.
Right.
And we find that people get their news today on their phones, on their way to work. They get it in short snippets on Facebook, on Twitter. That's how people get the news today. And now you can watch news live on Facebook, video on Facebook. So it's a real problem today how people get their information. I asked...
what percentage of people are you talking about? And what is it demographically different for young people than older people?
I find in an average audience of young and old, and I ask people, who reads their information in a printed paper? It's probably less than 20%.
Yes, but they're reading the printed paper online. They're going to their computer.
Short and sweet.
And they're opening up the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal.
And look at the New York Times. New York Times now has more people subscribing digitally.
But they read it. They're reading articles.
It's impressive.
Okay, they're not doing Facebook. You do, but I do not get my news from Facebook. My wife does not get her news from Facebook. Carol Lilienthal, our producer, does not get her news from Facebook. I don't know where Serge Goldberg and Sloan get. Sloan, our director. Sloan, do you get your news from Facebook or online, the way Gary is describing it?
Partially, yes.
And where else do you get it from?
I would get a link to a New York Times article, and then I would click on that, and it would take me to the
a link.
So it's all related.
Okay, and what? Yes, and what about Facebook? Do you ever get your news from Facebook?
That's what I'm saying. If there was somebody who would post something on Facebook, that will link me to a New York Times article. So yes, I would, in a way, get my news from Facebook.
And Jess does too?
Yes.
So I find people, even if they get the digital paper, are not reading it from front to back. They're reading pieces of it, or they're doing a search for an article that interests them, like Israel or whatever, and they'll go right into that particular article. But I think what your producer, what he just said,
our director,
the director said about getting a link, we all get links all the time these days. And we zoom in right for that particular story, and then we might get deviated to another story related to that story.
Okay, but they're stories. Your point was you've got 20 words, 30 words. That's not a story. What Sloan was saying was he will see a story. And this does happen to my wife. She will get a email or a link or something, and she'll click, and she'll go, but she'll read the story. And then she'll say to me, Mark, do you want me to forward the story to you? And I say, yes. Now I've got the story.
Electronically.
Yes, but it's a story. I'm not arguing about the mechanism. I'm arguing about the length. That it's very hard to treat the issues that you're treating, that I'm treating, in 20 words or 40 words. It's very difficult to do it without saying to people, there's a body of information you should know. It's giving the choir the song.
Here's the question. So when you get a link to something, however you get it, the person usually writes a little intro, right? What the link is. You don't just get the link. You usually get what the headline is or what the story's about. Very important.
Yes.
Headline, how many words are in a headline?
Very few. Yes, but and that's, however...
And who writes the headline?
But that's been true for
journalists. Does the journalist write the headline?
Don't they? It's the editors. The editors
not
write.
The journalist.
No.
So the very thing that's drawing you into a story is not written by the person who writes the story.
Okay. Are the editors biased? Is there an anti-Israel bias?
I can't answer that there's across the board. No, I don't think that.
Okay. Where is the problem located?
Truthfully, from my perspective, I think that there's such a rush to get information out that I think the days of what we used to know as the Lou Grant fact checkers, I wonder if they still exist.
Okay, but that comes back to my initial question. Is this a matter of either ignorance or a process, or is there malevolence? Is there intent behind it? The longer we're talking, the more I sense you feel it has less to do with somebody getting up, being anti-Semitic and being anti-Israel, but coming up and trying to find a catchy title that will interest its audience, sell newspapers or sell clicks, or in some way generate an audience.
Yeah, I mean, look with the
But that's not
with
that's
the Tel
not-
Aviv bomber, with
Yes.
the Tel Aviv shooter. Why would you say, well-dressed man in suit?
because they saw that somewhere.
Well, no.
'Cause
If you looked at the picture, of what happened, it was a well-dressed man.
Okay, my point is they didn't know better. It wasn't an attempt to be biased. It was ignorance, carelessness, and an attempt to sell. But it isn't anti-Israel.
Yeah, I'm not convinced across the board. That it's anti-Israel bias. I think many times it's sloppy or quick rush to get the information out there without checking the information. I think that's the case, because if you don't, somebody else is going to get it out faster. Okay? That information that happened with the Tel Aviv issue, I actually saw within 5 minutes more information on that on Facebook and Twitter than I actually saw online with the
All right,
the
may
big
I
paper.
give you an example?
Sure.
And I want you to evaluate it for me.
Okay.
Fareed Zakaria does a special on CNN called Why They Hate Us.
I have not seen it.
And he's showing his audience in an hour broadcast the thinking of the Islamic world. It's not clear, by the way, what the orientation is, because at times he seems very critical, and at times he says we're being overly critical and unfairly critical. And one of the things he uses as an example is he says people criticize the Quran for being a violent book and being an anti-gay book and being a misogynist book. And he says, but the truth is many religious texts of old are the same way. And he says, people point out in the Quran that it says that basically you're supposed to kill, murder homosexuals. And then he goes and says, but in the book of Deuteronomy, he doesn't say Deuteronomy, in the Bible, he says, and then he does. He says, there's a line from Deuteronomy, or maybe he's quoting a line from Leviticus, I don't remember, it doesn't matter. In the Bible it says that if a man has sex with another man, the actual text is if a man lies with another man,
Right.
you're supposed to kill them both. Now that's in the Torah. In the Torah, homosexuality is a capital crime, male homosexuality. And he uses other sections of the Bible. What he doesn't talk about is the extent to which there is a rabbinic tradition which interprets every verse in the Torah,
Right.
and also has now outlawed capital punishment. That capital punishment has basically never been part of mainstream Jewish life, and that it's one thing to find it in a book, it's another thing to say, has this been a tradition of a religious nature? I'm offended that Fareed Zakaria would leave it as simple as, well, there's a line in the Quran and there's a line in Deuteronomy, and they both do the same thing. I want to know your reaction to Fareed Zakaria's comparison.
Well, I'm only basing it based
Yes.
on what you're
And
saying.
that's
so.
an honest caveat, but given that caveat.
Well, I think it's lacking a lot of context. I think what he's talking about lacks a lot of context.
Is it anti-Israel or anti-Jewish?
I don't think it's anti-Israel or anti-Jewish. I
You
think
don't?
it's sloppy.
Okay.
I actually think that's sloppy.
Okay.
Okay, I think he was just trying to make simple comparisons, and it's not so simple to do. I happen to not think, I don't think that the Quran is a vicious book either. Okay, many people do. Some people think that the Torah is a vicious book as well. It's not. Okay, so what I'm saying is I think people can interpret it however they want, but I think it's just sloppy work.
How about the way the Gaza war was reported and the extent to which it was suggested that Israel was guilty of using disproportionate force?
Which Gaza war?
2014.
Actually, in the 2014 war, Israel did a pretty darn good job of reporting the stories, whether it be through organizations like us or through the IDF Twitter site, that you actually felt like you knew exactly what was going on, when it was going on. It was pretty impressive. Much better than the war in Lebanon and even the 2012 Gaza war. Okay, things had gotten much more sophisticated. I think it's always going to be a case where people are going to look at the cup half empty instead of half full. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, the fact is that's missing a context, which is where were all these people killed? They were what was the general age of people that were killed in Gaza? Roughly 19, 20 to 28, 29, 30, roughly. Okay, those are the fighters. Those are the people who are going at war. Where were they killed? In homes. Okay, where they were also shooting rockets too. Missing context, right? That was missing context. Israel...
On American television, that was missing context.
Completely.
It enraged me. It doesn't seem to enrage you.
It does enrage me. You know, I have to be very clear that I have to...
You just said the 2014 coverage was pretty good.
Was much better than it was...
It was horrible.
In what way?
If you turned on MSNBC, CNN, any of the networks, it was all about disproportionate force. It was all about why is Israel continuing to drop bombs and do these air raids and kill these innocent civilians and children. Bernie Sanders gets up in an interview with Daily News and says Israel killed 10,000 people.
But then it was immediately corrected. Didn't somebody say, I think that's a little bit too high?
But your job and my job is to correct. The correcting is not the issue. The issue is Bernie Sanders thought he was telling the truth because that's what he saw.
I can't comment on Bernie Sanders and who he's
But you understand what it represents?
I do understand what you're saying, but
And why am I arguing with you that the media stinks?
You know...
You should be telling me.
I don't think that our problem necessarily was here in America. First time I ever saw in 2014, a station like CNN actually cover what the tunnels looked like. Did you ever see the tunnels before?
Yeah, no.
First time CNN.
Nobody saw the tunnels before.
Oh, CNN and a very prominent reporter did a tunnel tour of what they looked like. They're not so...
Before the Gaza war?
No. During the Gaza war.
Okay, but nobody knew about them till then, including Israel.
Because it didn't make any... Oh. But now Israel's caught on to this. You know that.
Okay, but I don't understand what's your point that CNN took us to the tunnels? They did take us to the tunnels. At the same time,
that Israel,
they're telling us Israel's using disproportionate force. They're showing us tunnels, and they're having Palestinians come on CNN and say the tunnels were there for defensive purposes. And nobody on CNN says, you got to be kidding me. That's an anti-Israel bias.
Well, and I don't remember how many emails and how many alerts we put out, but I know we did alerts on that as well, and video alerts on that. I can't remember what they were.
Wait, I give you credit for that. I'm only saying that I was and remain adamantly critical of how the 2014 Gaza war was presented to the American people. I don't know what happened in Europe, but I'm told it was worse in Europe.
Yes, it was.
Okay. So
except there were reporters overseas that actually were on site at schools where there was bombs going off, where there was actual rockets, not bombs, there were rockets that were being launched from schools. Actually, in one particular case, there were rockets going off, and right behind it, 500 meters, not that far, was a UN flag. Okay? So, and that was from, I believe, France or India. I can't remember which country it was. You don't think that people in America saw that? I can tell you, that's how I saw it. I didn't see it actually through Honest Reporting. I actually got an email link about those reporters who were actually almost killed because of the missile rockets that were going off.
Okay, let me take a step back. I'm asking the question broadly. Mm-hmm. To what extent is there, in your opinion, in America, an anti-Israel bias either in electronic or print journalism?
I think that there's a rush to make Israel guilty until proven innocent. And we believe in our organization, as many of us do, that Israel should be considered exactly the same as any country in the world expects to be treated, which is innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. I think there's a very important distinction. When you only show pictures of Palestinian children, when children are hurt or they're in pain and suffering and bleeding, I don't care if they're Palestinian, Israeli, Syrian, whatever, it's sad, okay? When you show pictures of dead children, I think that's tragic. That's exploitation of the worst kind, okay? And we're teaching in our organization how to be careful not to fall for that. That's sad, but that evokes an emotion that's very difficult to deal with. Is that intentional? You bet it is. And we as a Jewish people can't compete with that because we don't take pictures of our dead. Against the law. And we know that, okay? So we have to be better than that. That's our challenge. Mm-hmm. Our challenge is to take a look at pictures today like we've never looked at pictures ever before. That pictures today, this presentation that I do now all over North America, does a picture paint 1,000 words? It's an old saying, but it's like it was written today. It's an interesting, I have this from Diane Arbus. A picture is a secret about a secret. The more it tells you, the less you know. It's a very relevant point. And the other thing about a picture is you don't take a picture anymore. What do you do with the picture? You make it. You can make anything about a picture be. From the flag on the Temple Mount, you can make a picture anything you want it to be. That's sad. And we need to be better than that and be aware of that.
What about the BDS movement? To what extent is the BDS movement in some way using media to win converts?
I think the BDS movement is doing an amazing job of trying to explain a very powerful story that is so limited in context. People don't understand that to boycott Israel today, you have to live under a rock. I don't know how you successfully boycott Israel. When a former president who's been very outspoken against Israel, and you know which president I'm talking about, who was nearly dying, Jimmy Carter, right? How did he get saved his life? Okay, let's see if Jimmy Carter speaks out against Israel.
Explain how he got saved.
It was pharmaceuticals from Israel.
Correct.
I don't know if it's Teva, I don't remember which
Doesn't
company it
matter
was,
what.
but it's pharmaceuticals from Israel. Okay? I don't know how you could survive today in today's world without having your life being touched by Israel in one form or another. When I spoke at a BDS group, at a Students for Justice in Palestine a number of years ago, and there were, kids like to put their notes on their cell phone. And they stood up and gave me some questions. I said, hold on just a second. They said, give me your cell phone. And he said, why should I give you my cell phone? Well, you know the answer. Can't use an iPhone. Apple's investment in Israel is amazing. And now Microsoft, amazing investment in Israel today too. So I don't know how you boycott Israel successfully today. And in fact, there are states now that are outlawing boycotting based on those standards.
Although really that's not the issue. You would be against BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanction against Israel, even if there was not a single product we used from Israel. You'd still be against it. It's a matter of principle.
It is not what we believe in. It is not. We don't believe in boycotting Israel just because it's a Jewish state.
Right. Is that why they're really against it? Because it's a Jewish state? Is that the bottom line,
It's a $1 million question. I think we could probably have 2 TV shows talking about that.
Okay. Part of you fears it is. No, more complicated than that.
It's a very complex issue. Why is it that BDS sort of rose up in the first place? It's really to, as many famous leaders have said, it's to empty Israel of Jews at the end of the day. How successful is it? Not really. Some places it rises up, and then people realize how awful it is and how anti-business it is, how anti-wrong it is. And what happens? Places like New York that does legislation that's so powerful, I think it's a trendsetter for yet to come. So it's...
And you talk about the legislation that New York is engaged in, where it's illegal to boycott Israel.
Yep.
What about on college campuses? Are you worried that BDS
Yes.
is strong on college
Very,
campuses?
in many areas, it's incredibly strong. And that's the challenge. That is a challenge, and there are many fine organizations that we partner with that work on college campuses, but that takes a very special group of people. And I happen to think that empowering kids in college, while we have to do that, you need to educate people before college. If you start in college, it's going to be really a catch-up game.
Okay. What age do you want to start?
I believe you start them in middle school.
And what do you teach them in middle school? Just general,
I'll give you a great example.
please.
I did for a group in 5th grade in Florida a number of months ago about apartheid, Israel, the apartheid country. And then I show examples of what apartheid really looks like. And one of them is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia that has 68,000 men that attend a soccer game and not one woman. That's something that a young kid can grab onto and understand. That's a teachable moment. The fact is that Hamas had a Hamas doll. You saw that a number of months ago. That was actually seized in the port of Haifa. And it basically has slangs on it about Israel, from sea to sea, Israel, it will be us. We will own you, okay? That's very powerful, and kids got it. I have to tell you, the kids that I've taught about that really got it. In fact, some of the parents have called me back saying, that was such a teachable moment for my young person to learn.
Was this in public school?
This was in public school, yes.
And have you ever had pushback where people say, yeah, you're trying to push a certain propaganda and trying to influence my child and you shouldn't do it?
In public school, yes, I have. I have. And I don't do that many public presentations because of that very issue. But I'm okay listening to the other side of the story. In fact, I don't shy away from it. And I encourage people who want to advocate for Israel. And I've talked to people, even just on the way over here today. What was the last thing you read that was pro-Palestinian? People don't like reading that stuff. If you're a real active advocate for Israel, how many times do you read on the opposite side of the story? I think that to be an eloquent debater, I don't know about you, but in high school, when I was assigned a debate topic, I never got the side of the topic that I wanted. I always got the side that I didn't appreciate. It makes you a better debater.
And the therefore here is you want to debate the Palestinian side.
No, I want people to not only be knowledgeable by reading honestreporting.com and all of the stuff that we have, but I think they ought to really be educated about the other side of the story too.
The other side meaning the Palestinian narrative.
Yes, yes. And there's plenty of sources to check. I'm not going to publicly say what that is, but I think it makes you a better debater. It makes you a better advocate. And the people that I teach always appreciate the fact that you don't have to read it every day. But if you read it once a week, it gives you a sense of depth, how the story can be conveyed one way and how it can be turned around into a totally separate story.
Where do you get the information about the Palestinian side?
Well, just Google it. It's pretty easy. I'm not going to say it publicly, but they're pretty...
Why wouldn't you say it publicly? You want us to do it. You
Go
want
to
us
Google and say pro-Palestinian. You can find it without a problem. It's not a problem to find. There are plenty of incredible websites that tell the story in English about the Palestinian issues.
And they make the Palestinian case.
Yes.
Okay. And that's helpful because?
I think it gives you a sense of understanding how people, what perspective they're coming from.
How do you know if they're telling the truth or not?
I don't.
Well, that's not good.
I know that if they're
to...
talking about bludgeoning Palestinian kids by Israeli soldiers, because you hear that a lot. That's probably not true. I would more than likely think that's probably not true.
Is there anything in this pile of papers in front of you you'd like us to see?
Well, we're going to have some of these things coming up, but I happen to love this particular picture. There's a quote from, some people have said it's from Mark Twain, some people have said it's from Winston Churchill. If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed, and if you do read the newspaper, you're
misinformed.
Bingo.
Right.
Not written today, but it's like it was written today. And today it's even that much harder because we're getting our information online.
And you feel your job, the job of honest reporting, is to make sure that we have a corrected version.
A corrected version that's short, right to the point, and that we empower people to feel that they have a role in advocating the other side of the story. You bet.
You're doing fabulous work, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Kol tuva hatzlacha in all you do, and from time to time we will talk, both in studio and on the phone, in the news.
Deal.
And I will turn to you for some real guidance.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you. The thoughts of Gary Kenzer, National USA Director, Executive Director of Honest Reporting, again, an organization that defends Israel from media bias. And again, visit the Honest Reporting website at honestreporting.com. See for yourself the outstanding work they do in being a media watchdog for the State of Israel, and then sign up for their free daily alerts. We're all in this together. And I'm so pleased we've been able to introduce those of you who didn't know about Honest Reporting before now to learn about this organization and to benefit from its fabulous work. That's honestreporting.com. Of course, as always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the things that Gary said on this edition of L'Chaim. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, to life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.